So government says that you need to start stockpiling at least water and canned goods. And they're talking about dozens of cases of water. And so I read the article, and what they're talking about is they're going to have power outages. I talked about this the other day also. They're going to start having power outages because of lack of fuel, natural gas, diesel, and I guess even coal. Now, I'm not big into stockpiling. I know a lot of preppers, that's all they talk about is stockpiling. But even preppers will say you got to stockpile rice and beans and carbohydrates and sugars, and that's all carbohydrates is sugars. Carolyn and I have 350 to 400 jars of meat. We don't have any vegetables. Now, we have some green beans that we bought from the store way before we became carnivores. And occasionally we might eat one of those just as a filler, but they've been sitting up there forever. We haven't touched them. So we can our own meat. Now, a lot of people are going to say this is your stockpile. I don't consider this a stockpile. I guess it's semantics when you really break it down. Stockpile, not stockpile. What this is preservation. When we butcher a chicken, we have to can it. There's nothing else to do with it. Or if we find a sale at the store, we'll go ahead and buy all of it up. You can buy like pork butts, real cheap, $1.25 a pound. So you buy up all the pork butts and you bring them home, you cube them up, and then you can can them. And cold packing is so much easier than hot packing. So like the pork, you just cube it up, fill the jar up, can it. Whereas with the chicken, you gotta cook it first so you can get it off the bone, debone it, and then can it. So it's actually being cooked twice. I really enjoy canning. I know it's a real pain to can, but I enjoy it. I consider it a hobby. It's kind of like a science project. This is a lot of science involved in this, pressures and temperatures. Now, I want to be clear on this. If you're going to can meat, you got to have a pressure canner. Now, I know a lot of people say you can use a pressure cooker. I'm just not too sure on that. Do it at your own risk. What I do know is with a pressure canner, it comes with a book instructions on how to can everything. You can find a lot of these recipes online, but the canner has a book from the USDA. They've spent millions and billions of dollars doing all these tests. So I've never gotten sick using Presto's instructions. Now, a pressure canner you can buy from Walmart. I bought mine for $75. I think they're a little higher now since the inflation has went up. And I bought the second one used at a yard sale. Replaced the rings. You can buy those rings. I've got rings around here, an extra set of rings. You're supposed to replace those every 3 years anyway, so it didn't hurt to replace it. Outside, I've got 3 10-pound bags of chicken. And I've been trying to get that canned up, but it's outside, and we've been below freezing for maybe a week and a half now. So I've just let it sit in the cooler, let it freeze. It's kind of like a refrigerator without all the power and energy. Now, it's supposed to warm up today. It's above freezing today. So what I'm going to do, this is Sunday. I think on Tuesday, I'm going to see if I can break that chicken apart enough that I can get it into the pot so I can cook it. Now, when I can, I do get up a little bit earlier. And normally I get up about 5. When I can, I go ahead and get up at 4:30, start canning. Then I can just turn the cooker on. Now, what I try to do is I prepare the night before. I fill my pans up with water. I'll put the chicken in the water, and then I'll put bricks on top of it. I do all the canning outside. I'll put the bricks on top of the pans that I'm cooking the chicken in, so the raccoons and stuff don't get into it. It's going to be cool enough that I can do that. In the wintertime, it's kind of handy doing canning in the winter outside. It's like having a refrigerator outside. Whereas in the summertime, I'd have to leave it in the cooler, and the very next day I got to can it. You really kind of schedule your life around canning and grocery shopping in the summertime. But I like doing it, so it's no big deal. A lot of people say, well, I don't have time to do that. I got to get I got a job and all that. Well, that's kind of the benefits of being off grid. I don't need to make a lot of money. I mean, we have to make money, so I make money online here on YouTube. So I work a part-time job, I make enough money, pay the insurance, have a little bit in savings. But my job is to do this. And so you kind of focus your life on, this is not, oh gosh, it's just extra work and I can't stand to do the extra work. This is what we do. This is how we pay ourselves, through food and firewood, filling up the water tank. Carolyn makes, I'll even show it, she's got some right here. She's fermenting some corn and stuff, some scratch feed for the chickens, because fermented food, no, it helps them to stay warm, but it also gets more nutrients into the chicken. When they eat the grains without it being fermented, it just kind of passes right through them and they don't get all the nutrition out of it. Whereas you ferment it, that fermentation kind of breaks everything down so they get all the nutrition as it's going through their body. Now, another thing that a lot of people have been telling me is it's just so much easier to freeze the food. Well, that's fine. I'm all for that. Freeze your food. We have a little freezer over here, a little apartment size refrigerator. I don't even know if it's apartment size, dorm size, probably better. It's got its own independent freezer, and we got 30 days worth of meat stacked in there like a bookshelf. The problem is if you're on the grid, you have a risk of that food going bad when they shut your electric off. They're not saying how long they're going to shut it off. Is it 5 hours? Is it a day? I've told the story before. My grandma had like $4,000 worth of beef. She had 13 cows that she butchered the fall. And so this was in springtime. Now, of course, a lot of that beef she gave to family members, her children. So she had it like in 4 different freezers, all this beef. In that spring, there was a huge storm came through. And a lot of people will say, oh, it was a freak storm. It had, that just happens sometimes. No, storms happen every year. So it knocked her power out for 2 weeks. Now, she didn't have a generator or anything. All that meat went rotten. So they just threw it out in the woods and fed the animals. You could get a generator. The problem with a generator is you're going to run out of gas. We have a little 2,000 watt generator. It'll run 11 hours on a gallon of gas. If you're running that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're going to go through 2 gallons of gas about every day, a little bit more than 2 gallons of gas every day, if you run that all the time. With us, we run it just to charge the batteries up. So about 4 hours on a cloudy day. We have solar panels, so our solar panels pretty much all the electric we need. And on cloudy days, we run the generator. It's not a bad alternative, but I tell you, the better alternative is to can your food. The startup cost on canning is high. I have to grant you that. $75 for the canner. Buying the jars, buying the lids. Of course, we use Tadler lids. Tadler lids are a 2-piece component here. So you have the plastic lid and then you got that rubber seal. The rubber seal lasts 10 uses. That little red rubber seal. And the white lid lasts indefinitely. You can use it forever. 10 uses or 10 years. The back of the box says 10 years. Everything online says 10 uses. We mark it with a little magic marker every time we use it, so we know how many times we use it. We also mark them if they fail. That way we know if we have a bad ring, so the next time we use that ring, if it fails again, then we know it's bad. We also have used the metal lids, but they're just not as cost effective if you think about it. They're hard to find. Now, before somebody screams at me and says, you got to take the rings off of that, you can see that we did take the rings off the Tadler lid. That's what the instructions say. But the instructions on the bottom of this box says you can leave the rings on. So we leave the rings on. That way we can double stack. You might see here that we've double stacked. That way it doesn't jar the lid. Now we can't double stack the Tadler lids because if we stack on top of that, it could knock it loose. We have used metal lids in the past, but since we got the Tadler lids, we've been trying to stick with Tadler lids exclusively because there's a huge cost in lids. Whereas with the metal Tadler lids, once you buy them and you reuse them, the price comes down every time you reuse them. Now, a lot of people say you can reuse the metal lids. I highly recommend you don't. They're designed to fail in the second use. Some people say I'm lying, but that's just, I've read it several times that you're not supposed to use those more than once. A lot of people say that they're scared of canning meat. If you can can vegetables in a pressure canner, you can can meat in a pressure canner. There's no difference. The thing you want to be, I guess, more careful about, when you clean the lip of the jar here, you want to use vinegar. You want to get that grease off of there. Otherwise, it may not seal. But other than that, it's just as simple as canning vegetables. And when you cold pack, in my opinion, it's even more easy than vegetables because you don't have to blanch the vegetables. You don't have to put water in or anything. I mean, chicken is an all-day process. Don't get me wrong. But pork, cube up the pork, put it in the jar, can it. So as I said at the beginning of the video, governments are starting to say that they want you to start stockpiling food. Germany, which is supposed to be the richest country in Europe, has said that they need you to stockpile water and food. Now, of course, I do have viewers all over the world, and I need to think about everybody. But the thing is just the other day I made a video where they're saying that regulatory agencies, government regulatory agencies in the United States are saying residents in the East, Southeast, and Texas and Oklahoma, I can't remember every place, they are going to have power outages this winter. So we can say, oh, well, that was Germany saying stockpile. It's just our government isn't going to say it. They're not going to show that they have a weakness, that they've done anything wrong. So as I've been saying all along, you need to stop relying on people to take care of you. If you got the government taking care of you, you got utility companies taking care of you, they're going to fail you at some point. And it seems more and more likely that this is going to happen. A few years ago, down in Texas, there was a power outage for 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks. And people froze to death. Now somebody was bragging, well, yeah, right after the power outage, though, temperatures went right back up and I was out washing my car. Okay, well, what about the time during? You lost all your food. You had no heat. People were out in their cars trying to keep warm. People are suffocating from carbon monoxide poisoning in their cars. People are in their garage, in their car, not even realizing that they're going to poison themselves. So why not be prepared? Have some firewood, backup source of heat, have your food. This is not prepping food. We eat this regularly. You can see when we're done with the jar, we put it in upside down, washed up. The cat also eats this. This is a very cheap cat food, believe it or not. When we buy the chicken in them 10-pound bags, it's cheaper than buying canned cat food. So she gets that 2 times a day, a little spoonful or a forkful. So we're eating it. It's not our stockpile. It's constantly being rotated. If you start thinking more as an independent person versus stockpiling, I think you're going to be better prepared. I can see in preppers' faces that they have a fear of something going bad. And they know in the back of their mind, I used to be a prepper. I used to call myself a prepper. Back in the early 2000s, right after Y2K, I was a prepper. And I always knew in the back of my mind, I wasn't ready. I was not ever ready. I was on city water. And I knew that if water went down, I wouldn't have any. I had this little well, you know, those little hand pump wells like they had back in the olden days. I had one of those, but I had no way to filter the water or use it. And I always wondered how to do it. Well, now that I'm independent, self-reliant, I have no worries. Honest truth, not one worry. If something were bad to happen, we could make it. You know, I said in a video that I would feed the chickens, raccoons, and possums. And people said, how would you do that? And I'm like, how do you not know how to do that? It's amazing to me what people don't know. But if I can butcher a chicken and cook it and can it, why can't I butcher a possum or a raccoon, you know, trap it in my little live trap, butcher it, cook it. Even if I wanted to, I could can it. I wouldn't have to can it. I could throw it out to the chickens and they eat it all up in one day. So if you click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was talking about canning pork. So if I can inspire you to not be afraid and still have everything under control. Thanks for watching.